We will begin during the winter. Normally, it's quite uncommon that there is a lot of snow in the Netherlands. It will only snow a few days each year, and sights like these are quite rare. Most animals will not come out with days like these, but there's one out here who left these footprints. The owner of these footprints is still searching for food in this thick layer of snow. Eventually, he shows himself. It's a red fox. Red foxes are quite common in the Netherlands. You can find these red foxes all year round, and not only in the dunes. The red fox isn't much bigger than your regular cat, although because of his thick winter coat, he looks a lot bigger. The red fox is an opportunistic feeder, which means he will eat about anything, like small mammals and birds, till berries, fruits, eggs, and even insects. But when everything is covered in snow, the fox must truly rely on his keen sense of smell and his great hearing. It is even possible for the fox to find mice beneath the snow. But no luck here, so he will try somewhere else. Finding food during these conditions is a hassle for almost all animals, such as this finch who is forced out of his tree to look for food on the ground. While the snow is still falling, this large fallow deer male is still looking for some clean patches to graze. While the older animals are still out here, the younger ones cannot be bothered and try to find shelter as soon as possible. The next morning, the sky is almost clear and it has finally stopped snowing. Although the sun is shining, the snow is still covering a large area and its vegetation. Now that the snowfall has stopped, the young fallow deer decide to come out of hiding. It's probably the first time these young ones see snow. These goldcrests have also decided to come out and look for food. Here in the dunes you can find this bird all year round. These birds are one of the smallest you can find out here. Because of the golden feathers on top of its hat, this bird has been given the name goldcrest. After a couple of days, large areas are still covered in snow. At this time of the year, the male fallow deer are still carrying their antlers, but it won't be long till they fall off. The males are called bucks, and they are the only ones who grow antlers, and they shed them each year. The fallow deer of the dunes are still trying their best to find clear patches of grass. But if that isn't enough, they have to turn to other food sources. And what better food source is there than twigs? To get to the best twigs, it is far easier if you don't have these antlers stuck on your head. But unfortunately, it won't be till April or May till he sheds his antlers. A different animal in the dunes is well adapted to these cold conditions. It's the Highland cow. This breed is originated from Scotland. The Highland cow has an unusual double coat of hair. It is also known to have the longest of any cattle breed, which makes it withstand really cold conditions during the winter. Other animals are not so fortunate. They have to find a lot of food to keep themselves warm, or they have to be high in numbers. Because a large area has been covered in snow for a few days, food is getting scarce, which makes it hard for the weaker animals to survive. So has this youngster lost his mother. His mother could not find enough food to sustain herself during these hard conditions. Although it is still freezing, the snow has finally disappeared. Early in the morning, this tum-tit couple have started their day. Their number one priority is to gather strength. Spring is coming and they have to build a nest. In a different tree, this starling has just woken up. He is looking around to all the noises the other birds are making. Before he takes off, the starling has to preen its feathers. It's a precise job to make yourself as aerodynamic as possible. Every little feather has to be placed in position. This great spotted woodpecker is looking for insects or grubs that live inside the tree. Woodpeckers have an adapted skull and beak, which make them able to drill holes in soft wood, which they eventually use for nesting. It is said that once you hear the woodpeckers marking their territories or see them building their nest, spring is on its way. But this particular great spotted woodpecker has nothing else on its mind but food. The same thing goes for these fallow deer. Although spring is on its way, there's not much vegetation that has started to grow yet. Even though there's nothing covered in snow anymore, these deers are still looking for an alternative food source. When there's not much fresh grass around, you can turn to this nice juicy bark. There is only one problem though. This bark can only be found high up in the treetops. So luckily for these deers, there is a fallen tree, which is still covered in juicy bark. But even then, it can still be hard to reach. Spring has arrived, the time of the year with new life. The growth and the amount of insects is probably the first thing noticeable in spring. The first thing we find is this caterpillar. This is the caterpillar of the cinnabar moth. The colorations on this caterpillar warns you it is poisonous. It became poisonous by the plant it has been eaten, the ragwort. This is a poisonous plant. That's why you will only find this caterpillar on the ragwort, because it is part of its defense mechanism. The cinnabar caterpillar will eat till it eventually has enough energy to turn into a cocoon, in which it will develop to the black and red moth, which color still means it's poisonous. The life cycle of this moth is pretty short. It will disappear during the month May, and if you missed it, you have to look for it next year. Even in the sandy parts of the dunes, you can still find plenty of insects. For example, this gray mining bee. This gray mining bee is looking for the perfect spot to dig a hole. Only the females will do this to lay their eggs in. This bee probably just emerged herself, because they spend almost an entire year underneath the ground. For each egg she lays, she will also put nectar in, to serve as food for the newly born grub. She will eventually die when the job is done, and the next generation will emerge next year. These large mounds of twigs and pine needles are made by redwood ants. This colony has made such a large mound, it may contain multiple queens. If you look closer, the mound is crawling with worker ants. They will make sure everything is in order, from collecting food to repairs to the mound. You might be wondering how all these ants find their way in all this chaos. But all of these ants communicate with each other through pheromones. They all leave a particular trail of scent which the next ant can pick up. And they are even capable to send out distress calls like this. So the whole mound is capable of communicating with each other. This is why it's an organized chaos. The dunes do not only consist out of sand and vegetation, but they also have very large pools of fresh water. And during the spring, in these freshwater pools, we can find a sign of new life. Eggs. These particular eggs are of the common toad. You can recognize these eggs because they are laid in these long strings. After a few weeks, these eggs will develop as tadpoles. Thousands upon thousands will hatch around the same time. The tadpoles of the common toad will stay in large groups. After a few weeks, they will develop their hind legs, and after that, their front legs. Eventually, they will develop lungs and crawl onto land, and right after, they will lose their tail. Eventually, toads will develop poison glands as a defense mechanism, but for now, these little ones have to stay out of sight for predators. Without it even noticeable, spring has turned into summer. The average temperatures are about the same, and the amount of rain that falls is not that much of a difference. During this time, the conic horses are very glad with their green surroundings. There is plenty of food around. Just as the highland cows, the conic horses are released into this area. The highland cows and the conic horses are used to control the vegetation. To control the vegetation, it's better to have both of these large grazers, because they both eat different kind of vegetation, and the conic horses are able to cut off the grass shorter with their teeth. Because of the higher temperatures during the summer, you will be able to find more species of reptiles and amphibians. Although green frogs, brown frogs, sand lizards and toads are quite common in the dunes and particularly easy to find, there are also a few reptiles and amphibians that are more uncommon. For example, this one. It is called a blindworm. At first you would say it's a snake, but actually it's a reptile. The difference between this and a snake is that its jaw is fixated, so he cannot swallow large objects. He has eyelids, and he can shed its tail as a defense mechanism. Blindworms spend most of their time hiding beneath objects, like a log or a rock. That is the reason you won't find them that often. For the amphibians, there's another candidate. This one doesn't trust on hiding, but on its camouflage. It's the European tree frog. This frog is as green as an apple. As its name refers, it's an excellent climber. The tree frog spends most of its time out of the water. During the day, this frog can be seen sunbathing. Although every amphibian needs water to survive, these frogs have adapted. They can stay out in the sun for the whole day. Their skin is capable of preventing dehydration. Besides that, these frogs have really sticky fingers, which is perfect for climbing. This frog is just going to take a rest, because there's a big event tonight. As the sun sets and the light fades, it's time for the big event. What you hear is a choir of tree frogs. The tree frogs that are calling are just the males. They're trying to attract the female, and they will only be doing it during the night. Our final season has begun. The leaves are falling off the trees and the nights are becoming shorter. As a lot of animals are trying to find a hiding place for the winter, these big grazers are still out here. During the next month, these highland cows will grow their long hair back. As for the Koenig horses, they are just trying to make the best of it, eating as much as possible to have a lot of energy for the winter. Although these horses grow a winter coat, it's not as thick and long as the highland cows. So before all the vegetation disappears, these horses are trying to eat as much as possible. And of course, all this eating can make you tired. Very tired. It's our red fox again. Although red foxes normally sleep outside, during the winter it's possible for the females to sleep inside their den. This female fox is urinating around her den to mark her territory. The time she spends in her den isn't for nothing. She will give birth there, and in spring she will come out with her new family. Fall is a special time for the fallow deer, and it's probably the first time this young one will experience the big event that's coming. Mating season. During this period, the males will bell their hearts out to attract the attention of the females. The bellowing of the bucks can be heard from kilometers away. This buck eventually decided if the females won't come to him, he will just go to them. The high-pitched sound is a response of a female to his call. Belling isn't only used to attract females, it is also used to mark territory. This male decided to walk away from the confrontation with the larger male, but coalition with other males was unavoidable. When the tension rises between two males, they will use their antlers to see who is the strongest. It is quite uncommon that the deers fatally wound each other. Normally, one of them will eventually give up. This buck has been worn out through all the battles. He will not have any offspring this year. Hopefully, he will be having more luck next year.